You're actually the first person that I've had. This is the first recording, hence some of the technical issues we've had. And yeah, so this is something that I thought to myself in my head. How I want these conversations to be as fluid and as organic as possible, right? I know I sent you some questions earlier, but I do want it to be just a casual chat, as if we're catching up, and we are. Just catching up about the industry, catching up about what, in this case, GraphCMS is doing, what you're doing at GraphCMS. So why don't you tell me a little bit about you, Ronak? Before GraphCMS, before you started working there, what was your background? How did you come to work for GraphCMS? That kind of good stuff.
Sure. Well, before GraphCMS, I was still in Berlin. For context, yes, GraphCMS is remote, but I am based out of Berlin, which is where most of our commercial team sits, and which is where our HQ is. Before this, I was also in Berlin working with a company called Zenmate, which was in the VPN industry. We were acquired towards late 2018, after which I joined GraphCMS. So not my first stint into SaaS in general, but definitely my first going all into developer tooling and APIs. So yeah, it's been incredible. It's been about 2.5 years now, and in many ways it seems like we're just getting started. But I mean, of course, following the whole DXP space and the MACH space, I'm sure you can relate that that's how many of us feel in this segment.
Yes, for sure. So you mentioned DXP and MACH there. So why don't you give us a very quick intro into GraphCMS? What it is, very, very. I know it's a tall order, very, very simply in a summarized way, and also how GraphCMS, attempts to position itself in a way that makes it stand out from other headless CMS on the market.
Yeah, so GraphCMS is just that. It is a CMS, and the graph comes from the fact that we're GraphQL native. So very similar to the concept of headless CMSs, we are a GraphQL content API that was originally designed to serve digital content to n number of front ends without an opinion. What we've seen recently is this whole concept of content federation emerge, which is kind of how we're seeing content management evolve. And I'm sure we'll dive into the details later on. But as a vendor, what we're seeing is that content management is great for a subset of digital creators and developers and editors. But what's really been lacking is that sort of back-end agnosticism or the back-end support where you can really programmatically source content to enrich whatever you're serving to the front end. And that's kind of the space we see ourselves getting more into, where if you're an e-commerce shop, for example, in most cases, your CMS is where you would have your marketing content live, maybe your assets if you're not using an asset management, but you'd still really have those round trips to your commerce API, to your PIM, to your payments, where you're getting the benefits of headless CMS, but are you really focusing that much on the performance when you're still communicating with so many different tools and services? So that's kind of the problem we want to see ourselves solving, where you're still getting the benefits of the whole headless ecosystem and API first approach, but still focusing on just the one endpoint to be querying all of that content from. And that's GraphCMS in a nutshell, right? So we started with the whole front-end agnostic headless CMS, and we're slowly trying to explore how the back-end agnostic side of the story can be equally beneficial to developers and content creators.
Right, excellent. So you said one thing there that I think is going to stand out for marketers, right? Or in a kind of a bad way, because I don't know what it means. You said GraphCMS is unopinionated, right? And I think this is something that marketers aren't quite, they don't quite get, and they're not sure how that benefits them, right? So can you tell me a little bit about, what you mean by unopinionated, and in contrast, what's an opinionated CMS? What's an opinionated platform, and how does that translate into, the day-to-day for a marketer? How does that benefit them?
Okay, I might go off on a couple of tangents here, but if we take a step back, right, with the WordPress era and with web CMSs, to me that's really opinionated as a CMS, because just straight out, you are building something with a tool that is explicitly intended for being consumed on one platform, right? So a WordPress was meant to be a web CMS. The whole point of it is to build websites. WordPress's backend, their APIs, even their editor, it's all opinionated towards what the website experience should be. And that was great and is still great for a variety of use cases with content production or with corporate websites. But as you start to care more about, words like omnichannel or web applications or immersive experiences, or even the whole metaverse thing that's popping up with AR and VR, you need to start thinking about how your stack is not only able to serve the digital front ends of today, but also serve as a database or a repository that's ready to serve it to the front ends or the endpoints of tomorrow, right? And that's kind of what I mean by unopinionated, is that as a tool, we don't care where you're serving this content to. We don't care where you're sourcing this content from. We just kind of want to be that aggregation layer where all of your content exists in a structured format, and depending on what your use case is or where you're sending this content to, you have the flexibility to do however you please. And I think, speaking specifically to the use case of marketers, there's one sort of misconception here, and this is what irks me, is that whenever we speak about headless CMSs or headless content management, we tend to think of it as an either or, right? There's a conversation where, okay, it's all about the developers. No one's really giving a crap about the marketers. And I think that's the wrong discussion to have, because as a marketer, I shouldn't be concerned with the stack choices when it comes to things like the APIs or the frameworks. What I should be concerned about is whether this tool is able to offer me a UI to do what I'm supposed to do, or whether my engineering team can provide me that UI and continue to reap the benefits, right? So yep. I've spoken to a couple of points there about what the opinion is and why I'm not fully on board with the developers versus marketers conversation of headless CMSs. But what it really comes down to is, we as software vendors, we can say we're unopinionated, or we can have opinions about certain frameworks and certain front ends. But it's really down to the content team and the engineering team to agree on what their needs really are and find a tool or a combination of tools that's going to let them do that without sacrificing their business model.
Yeah, for sure. And, moving away from the whole developers versus marketers thing is going to be super key, I think. I think as we move into this whole omnichannel phase, we've been saying omnichannel for years now, but I think we're still moving into it, right? We're still, again, AR, VR, voice. We're just getting started with these kind of experiences. And marketers do need to sort of work with developers rather than against them, or seeing them as an obstacle. And I do think the way the headless industry is going is it's allowing marketers to take that stance, right? Previously, over the last 2 or 3 years, the headless CMS movement, it was built by developers for developers. It wasn't really for marketers, and there was reasons behind that. And it just sort of pushed marketers into a corner, and they felt, we're not really able, we don't have much autonomy, we don't have the tools we used to, and if we do, it's, in a convoluted way. I think, the fact that more and more headless CMSs are bringing in that sort of marketer-facing UI, previews, that kind of thing, it's definitely leveling the playing field a little bit. It's allowing them to work together a bit more, which is what's needed. Again, if you're trying to build something, an augmented reality experience or VR experience, there's no way around, working with the development team, right? However, as you mentioned with the unopinionated stuff, and what I want to sort of translate is, from a marketer's perspective, you shouldn't be worried about tech stack. I 100% agree with you on that. But what they should understand what it means for them, I think. So in this case, it's good news, because it means you as a marketer can go and create content with knowing that it can go to the channel you want to do, right? In Q3 2022, when you want to launch that virtual reality experience, at that event you're planning, it can be done because the tech stack there exists. And so you can focus on the actual content side, and then you can work with the dev team to make it happen and sort of bring it to life, kind of thing, so to speak. So, from that perspective, an unopinionated platform means that the content you create isn't specifically going to be for a website or specifically going to be for a smartwatch or a virtual reality experience. It's not specific for any one channel. It's, in fact, for all channels, right? So I think from that perspective, it's important marketers understand, if you're going for a headless, API first, MACH, composable, whatever acronyms and description you use, that's what it means for you. And it does mean it does mean you're still going to be working with developers, but it will be in a different way, in a much more productive way, I think, rather than sort of using them or seeing them as an obstacle to getting your content out there. You're actually going to be able to use them to really do what you wanted to do all this time, and you really couldn't, So that's how I feel about the situation.
I think that's you said something a couple of sentences back, and I think that's 100% the right way to approach it. Is that as a marketer or as a content editor or content creator, yes, I need to be informed about sort of what the possibilities are with this tool that I'm choosing or that my engineers are choosing. And as long as I'm informed with what's possible, then I'm fully on board. And then it's about that tool to fulfill what my requirements are, right? So as a marketer, yes, exactly. I care about scheduling content, about what the workflows are, about having the approvals and the content stages and so on. That's what I care about. And that's kind of what the CMS should accomplish for me. And then the sort of nitty gritties and the technicalities of things, that's not, it's my concern, yes, but it's not my problem. And that's something that the engineering team should fully be aware of.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. So going back to GraphCMS, it's been a pretty important year for you guys, I'd say, right? Series A, $10 million Series A.
Yep.
Joining the MACH Alliance. So, why don't you tell me a little bit about the year so far? Without going into too much detail, where has that funding gone so far, or where do you plan to put it? And then we'll come back to MACH Alliance after that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the timing of this is great because, like I said before we started recording, I was just scheduling our sort of year in review blog post, and there were several moments where even I was astounded, in the velocity of how things have gone and how much this year has accomplished. So yes, one of the big milestones was definitely our Series A in the summer. That was a funding of 10 million, and we've been quite conservative with it, I'd say. So most of it's gone into really investing in the team, bringing on some great new colleagues. We've sort of doubled our headcount from the low 20s to about 50 now. We're really focusing on having the product and the engineering teams really set up for success in this sort of content federation direction we're pursuing. And that's kind of where a majority of the funding's gone so far. We have a lot of plans for next year to grow the team even further and invest a bit more into sort of the commercial operations and scaling the team there. And yeah, the year sort of whizzed by, right? So I still remember we started the year with shipping out remote fields, which is kind of the first piece of the content federation puzzle. And throughout the rest of the year, we've really tried to make content federation stronger with support for REST APIs, for better performance with our API extensions. We've also really overhauled most of our editorial experience with, a brand new rich text editor, better workflows. Scheduled publishing was a big one. Tons of new features on that front. But I think the two that I would say are closest to our heart as a team was probably the permission system, which I know sounds boring, but at the end of the day, the possibilities this unlocks is quite ridiculous, given that you can set custom roles and permissions down to a field level with conditions and with localizations, which means that you really can control the very granular aspects of what people are able to do. And aside from that, we had UI extensions roll out earlier this year as well, which really increases the extensibility. I know this is kind of sounding a bit, product pitchy in a way, but it's also the way I recap the year, where I look into where we focused. And it's amazing for me to see that within 1 year, we've gone from the whole extensibility and backend agnostic conversation to building the sort of foundation and framework for true sort of enterprise grade security, and then also focus on the extensibility to bring in the SaaS tools and software that you're familiar with working with into the GraphCMS UI. So if I had to sort of summarize the year, it's really been about laying the foundation to make GraphCMS kind of yours as a user, where you really have control over who can do what and bring in the software that you're familiar with for your workflows. And that's kind of the direction we want to take going ahead as well, right? So while we definitely want to focus on federation and making this vision a reality, we really want to bring in the collaboration that comes in with content operations and bring in more of that extensibility that editors are used to. As they make that transition from, a web CMS or a monolithic CMS to a headless one, they don't feel that out of place because, some of the transition work is kind of there for them.
Absolutely. And I think, the fact you mentioned like the extensibility integrations, that's one thing we didn't cover when we mentioned, opinionated versus unopinionated. Again, it does sort tie into that. An API first or headless CMS, it's unopinionated when it comes to the tools you want to use too, right? It's not just about the content you're putting out. It's also, the headless CMS is trying its best to be, in most cases, just a CMS. And if it's API first, it's enabling you to integrate with your favorite CRM, your favorite analytics platform, your favorite personalization platform, so on and so forth. And again, I think that's something that non-technical people should know about this space. Should know about this trend towards API first, towards this microservice architecture, which I want to ask you about as well, by the way, because we're going into MACH as well in a minute. But yeah, I want to throw this in there because it came across my mind. Unopinionated, we mean that from the content perspective. Your content will be, unopinionated, or platforms unopinionated on where it goes, but also the platform would be unopinionated on, what tools you want to use with it and integrate with it. And one key difference between, an API first platform and maybe a legacy or a monolith platform is that integrations are possible with both. But with a legacy or a monolith, you're looking at something where it's a surface level integration, or an integration where you can't quite get the functionality you want, or the type of integration that you want because of just the way that it's built. Whereas with an API first platform, you can actually sort of more granularly integrate and do things in a way that maybe you couldn't with a legacy platform. So do you want to throw that in there? But now moving on to the MACH thing. So you guys joined the MACH Alliance. Let's talk about the motivations around that. I know I spoke to you about this. We've got an article on this on DXPReport.com where we actually, you gave me a very insightful quote about that. But why don't you just recap for us? What was the motivations there? What's GraphCMS hoping to get out of this membership?
I think that with the MACH Alliance, it wasn't too much of a hard sell internally, because as a company, we've always kind of been in that same direction, right? We've been headless, we are API first, and we are a microservice. And that's kind of the whole conversation we've been having with our customers as well, where if you're transitioning from your legacy or your monolithic suites into a best of breed stack, then you need to consider things like how APIs work together, what you need to deploy, where you need to scale. And these are the same principles that the MACH Alliance was founded over, right? So I remember when we were having this conversation earlier on in the year before the summer, we decided that we wanted to officiate the process into joining the MACH Alliance. And even at the time, what I loved the most about the Alliance was they really didn't want to be like this lead generation sort of cult, right? I remember speaking with Kelly, and he said that, there's tons of your competitors in the Alliance. There's also tons of headless commerce players, but it's really not about out-competing each other for leads. It's really about coming together as MACH compliant vendors and really starting to push for this approach within the market, where enterprise companies also need to think about the best of breed services that they use, and why a MACH mentality is what's going to help them scale into a digital first era. And I think that was the exact moment where I knew that we wanted to be aligned with a group like this, because I'm not sure if you remember, we spoke a very long time ago when Chris, our CCO, and I were writing a report on the entire modular DXP. Yes. And even at the time, we were speaking with some of our competitors. We were speaking with several other players in the headless commerce space, and that's the same message we were trying to put, right? Like, it's not about choosing A over B in terms of a vendor. It's about choosing a microservice approach versus a monolithic approach, and deciding what kind of works for your business model. And that's the same ethos that was sort of resonated with the MACH Alliance, and the reason we wanted to align ourselves with them. Mm-hmm. So, in terms of a fit, it definitely makes sense. And going back to your question on what we want to get out of it, it's just that we want a chance to educate the market on making better decisions when it comes to the future of their software, and we want to be able to contribute whatever experience and knowledge we have to the wider organization within MACH to sort of align on the next steps or the future of the MACH Alliance.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder sometimes, because I've spoken to a few different vendors, and at least one of them has said, we don't even see, they're a headless CMS, by the way. They said they don't even really see other headless CMSs as competitors, right? The way this founder pointed out to me was, I can't remember the percentages, but he said, roughly, let's say 90% of the CMS market, of the enterprise CMS market, it's probably more than that, in fact, is on monolithic and legacy platforms, right?
Yeah.
Then it's in fact probably more like 98%, right, of the enterprise. Like if you look at Fortune 500, for example. So he was like, should we focus our energy on scrapping out these other headless CMSs for that 2%, or should we focus our energies on the legacy and the monolithic platforms? Without naming names, that's where the bigger market share is. Those are real competitors, right? So as far as he was concerned, it was not a zero-sum game for like the headless market, the specific headless market, API first market, the MACH market, if you will. That's MACH architecture, not MACH Alliance, which I thought was interesting. And to be honest, I've always kind of thought the same thing. In the not so far back in my mind, but I've kind of thought the same thing. At the same time, of course, when you're going for projects, you are sometimes pitted against each other in that sense. So in that sense, you are of course competitors directly. But I thought his take was quite refreshing, and he didn't really see it as some others do. But I'm interested. How do you guys see it? How do you see it personally as well?
I mean, we see it in a similar way as a company and personally as well. I think the market's big enough. At the end of the day, if you have anything to do with anything online, there's a good chance you need a CMS. So if 100% of the market is being competed by the headless CMS players between one another, then no one's winning. You're just sort of trying to get at each other's backs, right? That being said, even with the conversations we have within the sales team or the wider commercial team, in 9 out of 10 cases, it's about on the enterprise level. From 9 out of 10 cases, it's really about companies who are moving away from legacy software or from custom in-house solutions, and all they want is a better stack. So, of course, in the evaluation phase, we are usually put together with your usual suspects in the headless space. Because there's so few of us as well. But here's where I give credit to whatever Contentful's managed to achieve, because they've really set the sort of market for headless CMS over the past several years. They've done a great job of educating these more, let's say, enterprise customers on what they should expect from their next stack. So even when they enter these conversations, even though they are on legacy software, they have a fairly good understanding of what they should expect from headless APIs. And that makes the conversation a lot easier. So very quickly, it becomes lesser about trying to differentiate yourself from the competition in a standard sort of checklist format, but it really comes down to talking about what their specific use case is, and between 3 or 4 vendors, what's the best choice for them. And that's something I've seen with the other headless CMSs as well, is that we all seem to be collectively taking this consulting approach to make sure that the customers or the leads making the right choice for their use case, rather than us just trying to close a sale. And I think that really says a lot to where the market is, because we all seem to have somehow landed up on the same page, where we feel it necessary to educate the market on making the best choices. And whether we're MACH Alliance or not, we're all headless and we're all API first. And we seem to have collectively taken this responsibility to advocate for an API first approach before getting into being too salesy about our own product. And I think that says a lot to the maturity of the vendors out there as well, where we're conscious about product customer fit, if that makes sense.
Interesting. That does make sense, and that is very interesting. Yeah, I love hearing like how different headless companies like sort of view the market, because there is actually quite a spectrum of how it's viewed, and it seems like you're on the same wavelength as the founder that I mentioned earlier. It is very interesting, and we're in the infancy, right? I mean, really in the infancy. As I mentioned again, the enterprise market is not, it's dominated. It's huge, and it's dominated by the legacy and monolith. And if you actually look at the numbers, the statistics, again, I'm not going to actually say statistics because I can't actually remember, but it's almost as if the headless industry it's barely touched it, right? It's almost untouched by the actual headless and API first and MACH industry, right? So that alone tells a story of where we are in the timeline of API first and MACH and headless systems. And the exciting thing is that we're seeing some of those legacy and monolithic players really taking note of the messaging coming out of this space and the acronyms coming out of this space, shall we say, and they're trying to themselves, they're trying to pivot, and they're spending millions and millions on pivoting their entire ecosystem. Again, no names, but that's interesting, and that's so exciting, because it's like, okay, these guys have got a much bigger slice of the pie, and yet they're already, I wouldn't say panicking, but they're already making their preparations, So it tells a story. It tells a really interesting story. and I think we're super early. I say we. I think this industry is super early.
Yeah. You're basically a part of the industry, right? But I think just before I lose that train of thought, I think that's a good point you've made with the legacy vendors, because I think you spoke about this a while ago as well. Is a lot of these sort of household names when it comes to legacy software, they've reached the point where it would be a bit foolish of them to just drop everything and pivot 100% into becoming a headless or a modular system. So I've also found it really interesting when you've noticed how acquisitions were leading in the space, right? So you have these legacy software sort of trying to go in the build your DXP way by kind of acquiring other microservices or acquiring other players and trying to become this, let's call it modular DXP, but they're still just pushing the suite concept rather than the stacks concept and trying to keep it locked into the ecosystem. And I think we will see a lot more of this come out next year, because there really will be this sort of fragmentation between a pure headless and a pure microservice approach versus this consolidation of services being rebundled into a modular software.
Yes, absolutely. This is something that I'm fascinated by, right? So seeing these acquisitions happening, it's like, I'm seeing, I've mentioned it before, and again, there's another, plugging the articles again, there's another article coming soon on DXP Report on, and it may be out by the time this is published, on the bundling and unbundling of the CMS industry, right? This plays into that. And again, without saying names, you can having a look at the acquisitions in the space from some of the monoliths and some of the legacy platforms, you can see they're acquiring, again, those microservices to sort of try to, again, unbundle themselves via these acquisitions, right? Now, interestingly, it's the fastest way to do it, I guess, but it's still slow, right? It's going to be a slow process for them. They're going to need, years to really pivot away from what they're doing to what they want to do. And somebody made a really interesting point to me. They're an agency in the space. And what they said was, we have a look at some of the acquisitions happening from the legacy systems out there, the suite systems, shall we say. They're not exactly buying the market leaders in the categories that they're buying, right? So if it's a digital asset management, for example, they haven't gone out and bought the top DAM or even the second or the third. They've actually bought a sort of middle market one. And there's a good argument to be made that the acquisition they've made is actually not that much better than what they've got as part of their suite. So they're going to have to spend some time developing that as well, bringing it up to sort of market leader status. So we're looking at, it's going to be a slow pivot, even though millions and millions are being poured into this pivot. So it's going to be, and I 100% agree with you, next year is going to be more of the same. I don't see this slowing down at all. I think we're in the middle of, or maybe at the beginning of this slow pivot. Like we said, we're in the early stages. It's going to be super interesting to watch it all unfold. We mentioned microservices, obviously. So MACH, the M is for microservices.
Yeah.
Somebody tweeted me a few weeks ago, and they said they couldn't wrap their head around the fact that MACH was using microservices when these companies are just SaaS companies, right? So he was like, "How they're not microservices? This is just a SaaS. Like, it's not a microservice." I explained to him my understanding. I'm going to ask you if you agree. Is I think the definition of microservice is expanded, right, to include, if you zoom out and look at your digital experience platform, where you've got your headless CMS, your CRM, your so on and so forth. Each one of those is now being referred to as a microservice, even though technically speaking, they're not in the traditional sense of microservice. They could be made up of microservices, but we're referring to them as microservices now in a broader digital experience landscape.
Right.
Am I right with that? What do you think?
I mean, I don't think there is a right or wrong, right? For us, at least within the SaaS space, a logical sort of line to draw is, okay, if we stay contextual to DXPs, right? If you've got let's say a monolithic DXP that's going to give you your content management, your asset management, your CRM, and your personalization. Let's just take these 4 components. And if we were considering this to be a monolithic DXP, to me, the sort of line to draw with what a microservice is if you take these core capabilities and you create a service around each one. So you now have 4 different modules or 4 different vendors providing you each one of these functions, but you have the flexibility to pick and choose which functions you want from different vendors. So I would already consider this a microservice. Yes, it's not as atomic as you can get from an engineering perspective, but this does help simplify the concept, right? And I think it's also a conversation I was having with. It's kind of a ridiculous example, but we were just talking about the whole sort of Office 365 suite, right? Because that's what it is. It is a suite. You're downloading the entire suite. But we were talking about how you're still not forced to use all parts. You can kind of pick and choose which one you want to use. So by that definition, does it mean that Word and PowerPoint and Excel individually make up microservices, even though the capabilities are ridiculous? There's no right or wrong. But for that context, it seemed to make sense, right? Because you're taking the suite, it's given to you as is, but you can still unbundle it and just kind of use stuff that you want, but you still have to pay for the other stuff. So it's not a complete microservice architecture. But if you then break it down and if Office went back to selling you each one individually, would it become a microservice architecture? Or wouldn't it? Right?
That's a good question. I like that.
Yeah. It's also a bit off on a tangent, right? Because if you take the classical sense from engineering, no, it's still huge. It's not a microservice. But for us, it seems to be simplified enough to explain the concepts and the abstractions we're dealing with.
Absolutely. I really like that example you just gave. But I think this is just another case of the acronyms and the descriptions and the buzzwords we use. They are fluid. I mean, fluid over periods of time at least. They do sometimes expand to mean different things, and this is one of those things where I think when you do zoom out of a digital experience platform, it's very easy to see what people mean when they say it's a microservice within a broader landscape, within a broader ecosystem. But that's how I see it. And I think that the point you just made is an interesting one. It's a philosophical one almost. You take it apart, it's still a microservice. If a tree falls, no one hears it, it still make a sound kind of thing. That's interesting.
Well, it's almost the holidays. We can be a bit philosophical now.
Well, it's, I mean, philosophical and technology can lead you to all sorts of places. Okay, so 2022, almost there. You said you guys have been relatively conservative with the 10 million, the Series A. What's the plan for 2022? You mentioned you've doubled your headcount. Is that the plan? Continue doubling, continue hiring? Do you have other plans, potential acquisitions of your own? Do you have is something set in stone or not really? I know you can't go into too much detail, but what's 2022 looking for GraphCMS? How's it looking?
I mean, we haven't gotten too specific with it. Like, we're not committed to doubling our headcount. We kind of want to take it and see how it goes. We're also wary of scaling pains, so we don't want to just make that commitment of let's double the headcount and then kind of figure out things. We want to make sure that everyone who's joined the team this year is fully onboarded and they're able to contribute to their maximum potential, get a chance to really make their voices heard before we grow the team out further. That being said, yes, hiring will be a sort of major cost center for the next year. We do have a lot of experiments we want to try in terms of acquisition in general. So we host the GraphQL conference this year. We will do this next year. That would be a considerable investment. We also want to focus a lot more on events and conferences, not only in the Jamstack space, but also a bit more into the wider enterprise tooling space and in the microservice space. There's a lot to be done with just general demand generation. We haven't been as visible in places as we would like. So, like I said, the more customers and leads we speak to, the more use cases we uncover, because honestly, it's fascinating what some of our customers are doing with our product. And we want to explore these use cases a bit more as well as we get into federation. So there's a lot of testing to be done. There's a lot of let's say references to learn for us, and we want to see where we can go with that without committing like a dollar sign to each sort of idea.
Makes sense. You mentioned that you're not as visible as you'd like to be in some respects. Is that in like by industry or by actual regions of the world?
Oh no, that's just my default marketer coming out, because you can always be a lot more visible, right? So as far as I'm concerned, it's always just about, well, if I had a bit more budget, we'll just double it. So I also want to make sure that we're being a bit smart about how we expand. We do have plans to be a lot more visible in North America and in the Nordics. We have Same with Asia Pacific. We want to try a lot more with having a presence at events and conferences in these places, stuff that we haven't had a chance to either because of the stage of our company or because of COVID. So really having the flexibility to get out there again is something that we want to take full advantage of.
Absolutely. I mean, and you are very big on content. I know you're very big on content yourself. GraphCMS as a company is very big on content. Video content. I was on in one of your videos last year, and I know you guys have tons of videos, tons of written content, tons of great guides you have on the site. I know you've got a hand in that as well. What's been working on that front? What hasn't been working? What do you plan to do more of?
But like you said, big content focused company. I love that about the team, that a lot of them genuinely enjoy contributing to content, and it doesn't seem forced. So it's also let us sort of experiment with a lot of different formats and a lot of different directions. What has been working well is, aside from your usual SEO content or, the sort of logical content, we've also focused a lot of time on creating what we've been calling just YOLO content internally. So our DevRel team, they're big fans of just finding some new JavaScript framework or some new tool that's been open source, I don't know, the week before, and getting their hands dirty with it and then creating content with it. So just as an example, Jamie, who's part of our developer relations team, he runs his own little GraphQL.wtf video series where he gets to play around with tons of APIs and tools. And in most cases, he's got these great use cases for how that ties back into GraphCMS or content management in general. And then he'll just spend a couple of days whipping together a couple of open source examples, creating a couple of videos or references, and then writing about it. So a lot of content coming out from DevRel is this YOLO level of content where they're just playing with something new, getting their hands dirty and seeing how it works out. But we've also kind of gotten a bit conservative in sort of the enterprise content we create, right? So we had some fun at the beginning of the year, which is top of funnel content, which was great, which was really helping the visibility. But we're also kind of starting to focus more on the specific product marketing content or the problem content, and trying to get some resources out there that are serving the other stages of the funnel. So lots of room for experimentation, lots of things worked out, but we definitely want to be conscious of this as we go ahead, that we don't want to restrict ourselves too much into, a very strict content roadmap and kind of leave that room for flexibility. Because like you said, right, there's always something new happening in the DXP space or in the content management space, and leaving that, sort of room for flexibility is what keeps the process fun and has a chance to get new things out.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, actually, before I move on to that, what I find unique about GraphCMS is your developers, as you mentioned, seem to be eager to put content out and do things and be in a public eye a little bit and just publish content, right, and actually spend time doing that. Whereas I feel like the lots of other companies in the space are the opposite, right? They're really trying to get the developers to write an outline for an article or just contribute a quote for a press release, and it's really difficult. And they, I think developers, by and large, they're not interested in that stuff. They want to code, they want to build things. They're not interested in sort of messaging and showing off the platform in that sense, right? So I think it's like a unique position you're in, right? In that sense.
I mean, I wouldn't say unique. I think it's also about how those developers approach it, right? So I was having a conversation earlier with someone about how developers hate marketing, yes, but they really do enjoy sort of being part of the conversation and the decision process. And I think that's a mistake we made earlier on when we were trying to get our developers to, contribute to content and be like, this is something you might be passionate about. Why don't you whip up like a draft or a couple of bullet points and we'll fluff it up and put it out there. That didn't work, obviously. But then we also, over time, we also figured out like there's several people in the engineering team who've been contributing to features or they're holding up the infrastructure. So they've obviously got a keen interest in certain topics. So we just took the other approach. We were just like, okay, let's get on a call. Why don't you tell me about everything you build? Like, tell me about what you've been doing and how you've done it. And if you're okay with it, we'll just draft it up ourselves within the content team and push it out there once you've had a chance to see if it's accurate. And if you just have this conversation with them, they're a lot more open than you'd expect because it's a way for them to share what they've been working on, because in many cases, the engineering team tends to build things in isolation and not really speak about it as much as they would like to. And on the other, it's also a great opportunity for the more commercial side of the org to just have a conversation that's, a bit more face-to-face with someone that's not related to, I don't know, when you're shipping X feature out or something.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know from first-hand experience, the best way to the best way to get content from a development team is usually to get them on a call and just hit the record button and just let them speak, and you can transcribe that later. It's very true. That's a great piece of advice. One thing I really liked from you guys was the build a DXP or buildyourdxp.com. That's the correct domain, right? Buildyourdxp.com. Yeah. So this concept of resources, like Netlify have got Jamstack.org, for example, with the all the headless CMS lists and that kind of thing, and you guys have got this, which is Build Your DXP, which is kind of a different spin on that. What was the motivation? What are the results? Actually, I'm really interested to see. Like, how are you tracking or measuring any sort of results from this? How has this gone down? I personally really like it, but I'm interested to see like how it went down internally with you guys.
I mean, it's always a great conversation to have with people who are just starting their sort of replatforming journey to move into the microservices approach. And I think Build Your DXP is actually a great example, going to your earlier point on how, we're not just at each other's throats in the headless CMS space, because even though it's by and from GraphCMS, we've still got a very sort of alphabetically objective placement of all other headless CMSs out there. And I think the idea for what this was really stemmed from that approach, right? Where we knew what we were doing. We wanted to push for this best of breed approach, but there really wasn't much knowledge out there. And even the conversations we were having, this was, I guess, a year and a half ago, we were learning about new tools and new APIs and new architectures that leads wanted to sort of put together. So we thought, we've obviously got these conversations going on. The sales team are aware of it. The commercial teams know about these new tools now. Maybe we should just put this knowledge out there, because obviously other people will have the same problem. So that's kind of what we did. We really wanted to keep this super objective and educational, and saying, okay, if you're building a DXP, this is kind of what it means. And looking at, all the existing DXPs, these are kind of the functionalities of the components you would want your new platform to take care of. So here's all the sort of SaaS vendors who offer APIs for you to go and do your thing with them, and it's completely up to you on how you see each component working together, right? So I don't know, if you're building a little e-commerce engine, yes, you'll need payments, you'll need commerce, you'll need inventory, you'll need personalization and content. So here's a starting point. These are the vendors you should sort of look at. And that was it. There was no agenda to it, really. We just wanted to have a resource out there. Obviously, in terms of how it was received, I'd say it's been quite humbling to see a lot of recommendations come in from people, from other vendors, but also from just regular people within the community who are saying, yeah, okay, well, try this software or try this software, and they're constantly expanding the list of components in there. But we've also just had some really great conversations. Like Chris and I were speaking at, I think it was Decouple Days, and we just shared a slide about what Build Your DXP was when we were sharing this modular approach. And there were a couple of people there after the call who were going through the resources, said, yeah, this is really helpful. This is a starting point, by the way. How do you recommend these sort of tools should play together for my use case? And that ended up being, some really great conversations, which had nothing to do with GraphCMS or having them in the pipeline. But it's been a great conversation starter for people who want to take this approach. They haven't had the resources to think about how to approach this, and just have a chance to chat about what a best of breed architecture could be.
Yeah, and I think it does a great job of just, like you mentioned, for people who are just getting started, looking at a DXP or what it could potentially be for them. This is a great way to illustrate what I think a lot of the time we try to explain, right? So we were trying to explain how the headless CMS will be your foundation. You can add and you can do this and that. And this actually just illustrates it. It's like, here's all the categories that you're probably going to use. And when you go into it, you can choose your favorite tool. And your favorite tool is probably listed on here. And, I think at that point, for a newcomer to the space, or just someone who's just like hunting for a solution, I think that, seeing all these categories and components laid out for them, it will suddenly click that, oh, I get it. It can work with all of them, right? I get it now. And we can switch and change them as well whenever we want. So I think it's a great illustrative tool, and I can imagine it's a great conversation starter for sure, which is great for you guys.
Yes, yeah. We've had a couple of ideas on how to expand it, so I'm hoping to get some time to get back into this next year. But yeah, I'd love to create a few sort of sample architectures for each use case or vertical, and just put it out there. Like, okay, if you're doing e-commerce, try this. If you're doing, I don't know, a portal, try this. That would be pretty interesting. So yeah, let's see how we can expand on that.
That is interesting. I'll be keeping tabs on that. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, Ronak. Great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Like I mentioned, this is actually the first recording of Fireside of DXP Report that I've ever done. So thank you for being my first guest.
Anytime. I think that's kind of a full circle as well, right? Because when we launched GraphCMS Talks the year before, you were my first guest there.
There you go.
So a little bit of a full circle.
Excellent. That's great. I didn't know that. So there you go. Okay, that's great. So thank you. Where can people find out more about GraphCMS and yourself?
The usual graphcms.com. All our socials are in the footer. And same with me, very creatively, first name, last name.com. So just ronakganatra.com and all my socials are from there. But yeah, keen to always chat and share knowledge about anything to do with headless or DXPs. I know that you create tons of great content. Always looking forward to Monday evenings for the latest edition in my inbox. But yeah, excited to see where DXP Report goes next year as well.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you saying that. We're trying our best, for sure. I'm excited to see it myself. Okay, Ronak, thanks again so much for your time. I'd love the conversation as always, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.